Hello and welcome everyone to the Solo Multimedia Podcast where I give you my unfiltered takes straight off the cuff. And today I'm going to be talking about the new mixtape from FKA Twigs, Caprisongs. So this one's actually a little bit old. It was released sort of mid-January, but honestly I only just got around to listening to it, well, basically just now. And I have a surprising amount to say about it, I feel like. So, I figured it'd be a good one to cover. So, I've been following FKA Twigs for a decent amount of time. I think I first listened to her on, I want to say it was LP1, the first either mixtape or album she put out. I think it was called LP1 anyway, I can't remember for sure. And I remember enjoying it. Essentially, what she delivers is a very featherweight, very kind of ethereal and bare bones alternate R&B. In a lot of ways, it actually reminds me of James Blake, because there's lots of kind of, the vocals are chopped and screwed a lot of the time and used as samples, and I feel like there's a decent number of effects on them to make them feel even more ethereal and airy and kind of floaty and all those other descriptive words of floating in clouds, I guess. I don't know how else to put it. But I haven't checked in with FKA Twigs in a while, I don't think. I know a couple of her EPs and her last album got a lot of attention. I don't think I actually listened to any of it. Which I should probably go back and do, to be honest, especially after listening to this, because I enjoyed this mixtape quite a lot. The first thing that jumped out at me right from the get-go is that she's essentially delivering the same thing. Her style is very much, like, intact, but there's a lot of changes that I think add quite a lot to make her somewhat more distinct, I guess. I don't think there's anyone else really mixing what I'm hearing here. And that's basically, she has her old kind of very bare bones R&B style with very like featherweight vocals, very like breathy vocal delivery, but it's combined with a surprising amount of what sounds like to me hyperpop influence. And I gotta say, it just adds a lot, especially considering the fact that it means she now has an easy, or I say easy, but like she has a way to incorporate a lot of detail into each song without it feeling jarring or without it ruining the atmosphere. In fact, surprisingly, despite all of these kind of like, hard-hitting like bass lines and bass drums and kind of like these squeaky, almost ridiculous sounding synths, despite all of that, she actually does a great job of maintaining the atmosphere her other work has had, at least the other work I've heard. Like, I think pretty much the first maybe 3 or 4 tracks on this record are all kind of, they all mix these two sounds together, and all of them are really solid songs, for sure. In fact, they remind me a lot of James Blake, more so here than on her previous albums, because of the way the vocals are kind of chopped and screwed, I guess, which is really, really cool. So yeah, right off the get-go, I definitely really enjoyed the moody atmosphere and the hard-hitting nature of a lot of the songs, despite the fact, again, they're still very kind of airy. A big highlight from the front was Oh My Love, which is admittedly slightly more ballad-like, and it's just a very floaty kind of like, very floaty song that makes you feel like you're in a cloud or something. And that's pretty much just the first 4 or 5 songs of the record are basically like that. The first big change of pace, in my opinion, comes with, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, I feel like I say that a lot on this podcast, but Pamplemousse, which is quite a jarring song, which is surprising. It's not very long. I think it's only about a minute and a half, and it's a big break from the normal sound the mixtape has presented up until this point. It has lots of like jarring, chopped and screwed, slightly more oh god, I'm trying to think of a good word. It feels almost slightly more glitchy, I suppose, and it's a good break from the first half. It really, or I say first half, from the first like maybe quarter. It really differentiates itself from those and gives a nice little breather from that sound, which is good. And then after this point, the record slows down a tiny bit. It's not quite as amped as the front half. For example, Light Beamers is a slower tune featuring a piano, although it still maintains a lot of the kind of features of the stuff I've described before. Then the very next song, Puppy Bones, was such a left field tune. Essentially, this song brings in a big dancehall influence, and as somebody who's never really been into that style, I am stunned how well it works here. She maintains, again, as she does throughout basically the whole record, she maintains her style for sure, and this influence kind of just serves to really differentiate this song from the rest of them, and I gotta say, it just works stunningly well. There's a lot that kind of still feels cohesive with the rest of the material here, like I've already said, which adds to legitimize this as kind of her just taking in an influence and really kind of outputting her interpretation of it, which I really, really like. Also, right towards the end, there's, or maybe like sort of around the 2/3 point, I suppose, there's like a really squeaky synth melody that adds a ton to it, and there's just a lot of detail in general on the song. Again, much like the first half of the record, really. And then I will say, here's unfortunately where the record does have a bit of a turn for me, I suppose. I feel like Which Way, Jealousy, Careless, and Minds of Men, honestly, this run of 4 songs, just all of them ended up feeling a little bit too low-key for me. It felt like she was going back to what she was doing previously. Like, everything was a lot more bare bones, but I don't know, just the songwriting or something didn't connect with me quite as much, and I found these songs blurring together a fair bit. I would say Careless is probably the biggest example of this. It has a really ghostly beat and really sparse instrumental, and it's largely focused on vocal performances, which are definitely strong, but the song goes on for like 3 minutes 40, and it doesn't have anywhere near the detail of the other songs here. And also the other thing is that I think if I remember correctly, I think there's a guest on a good amount of the song, and I don't think the guest is anywhere as recognizable, I guess, as FKA Twigs. So the song overall just didn't leave as much of an impression, and that's kind of the overall broad problem of these 4 songs altogether. But Careless, I think, was definitely the worst offender. The track after that, though, Darjeeling, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is a very lost track with plenty of airy instrumentals, but I'm glad the heavy bass is back. Overall, the song is good. It's maybe not as strong as some of the like front half of the album, but or of the mixtape, but it's still like a very, very decent song for sure. And then the whole record closes off with Thank You Song, which is a ballad that feels like it's summing up and coming out of the emotional turmoil of the record. It does a pretty good job of being that as essentially a piano-driven song with a solid hook, and overall it's just a very nice finishing point. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, overall, definitely really enjoyed this record, more than I was expecting. I really, really like the kind of new influences she's drawing from, at least compared to the material I'm familiar with. Most of the songs here are quite short and don't change a ton, but the atmosphere of each tune holds my attention for its runtime quite well, honestly. Like I said, all the songs here are very moody, and you get these kind of like interview or kind of like, I guess, conversation snippets that essentially are all about kind of like emotional turmoil in relation to relationships and, you know, heartbreak and attraction and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's basically the theme the record's going for, and all of those help add to the atmosphere. So that was all really good. Overall, the record is very cohesive. Even that run in the middle, I know I said that it doesn't hold my attention as well as some of the other stuff here. None of it's like terrible, I don't think, by any stretch, really. So if you listen to this record front to back, you might not even notice them. You might just get sucked into the atmosphere and stay there for the whole run through. And I wasn't a million miles off that, really. But you know, as I was writing my notes, I did note these tracks felt maybe less detailed and less interesting than some of the other stuff. But still, nothing here was like bad at all. The atmosphere holds up, and it's a really nice, moody kind of mixtape about a lot of emotional turmoil, from what I can tell. I guess I wish the middle portion maybe just had a better balance of slower and harder hitting songs. I think that might have helped it a lot. And I guess the only other criticism that I can say that's already should be fairly obvious is that I think the album is fairly front-loaded, but not too bad. Obviously, this is going off just a first listen, but I do wish the kind of like after the halfway point, I do wish there was still as much sonic experimentation as with the first half of the record. But broadly speaking, those are all my thoughts. I definitely really enjoyed this record. I'll be going back to it 100%. I'm excited to listen to whatever FKA Twigs does next, and I guess I'll have to go back and listen to the previous record too, and maybe some of the EPs, because if this is the direction she went a while ago, then I can really appreciate this. So yeah, really cool record. I'd recommend people go check it out if what I've described sounds interesting to you. If you're into all R&B or R&B in general, I think this is definitely a worthwhile album. Cheers for listening, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves, and I'll see you all around.